Hey, y'all know how we roll. No time to waste. Let's get it. Let's go.
If you at least agree with my definition, and it seems broadly feminists do,
Yeah.
that it's a movement towards egalitarianism and equity and the removal of patriarchy. That if you can't have an oppressed class without an oppressor class, at least not from the Marxist feminist view. In the case, if women are being oppressed, they're not being oppressed by wolves, they're being oppressed by men, right? So if that's the case, then my argument to them is that whatever you believe this oppression is, you will actually have to appeal to men in order to either relinquish whatever this oppression is, or concede to whatever it is that they want, because collectively women actually cannot overthrow any patriarchal systems. They rely on the force of men. And so if men, anytime they want to, decide to remove women's rights, there's actually not anything women can do about it, but the opposition is not true. The opposite is not true. Women cannot collectivize and take away men's rights.
Okay, so are you...
I hope she doesn't go into this, but his fight is... That's stupid. Everything he just said was stupid. I'm going to tell you why. Yes, they would have to appeal to men. But the point of feminism is the socioeconomic and political advancement of both the sexes. So yes, they would have to appeal to men, but that doesn't destroy the conversation of feminism, because feminism believes in helping both the sexes. One, that's one thing I know a lot of feminists don't do, but you got to read bell hooks to know that. Two, what's the argument he's making that feminism it shouldn't exist because they have to appeal to men? Like, I don't know, like no, I understand his argument. He's talking about the force doctrine type theory, and it's still stupid. It's stupid because if they appeal to men and enough men say yes, then boom. Like, it doesn't, I don't know, it's weird. That's a weird argument to make for a civil rights conversation. If women are being oppressed in society, shouldn't we be doing things to make sure that they're not oppressed as men? Wouldn't you want to do that? Like, why would men want to just oppress women all of a sudden?
Essentially saying that women do not deserve the right to fight for their own
That's
free
an
will,
odd claim. Yeah, that's an odd claim. I'm not making an odd claim. I'm trying to get us to the descriptor first. So instead of making a prescriptive statement, I'm starting with a descriptive statement. What is true, and then we can worry about what should be true after we can determine what is true.
Okay, but I'm trying to see, like, structurally, how does that work in the real world? Are you saying that women should not fight for their rights because they...
Listen, let's back up so I can distinguish two things.
Okay.
Is, ought, right? So I'm not trying to bridge the is, ought gap. I'm trying to start with a descriptive claim. So if the descriptive claim is true, then we can move to the prescriptive side of it. But right now, you would either need to agree with me that descriptively I'm right or that descriptively I'm wrong.
I can't agree with you to say that descriptively you're right until you apply what you're saying in theory to the practice of modern day society.
Good.
How does your equal force objection, how does this principle work in society? What are you saying in terms of how women and men coexist?
Yeah, I think that because that is the case, that men deserve to have various privileges that they're not given in society, which they should be given in society.
So what are the privileges that you think that men should have that women should not have?
Well, primarily, I think that if you're going to look at an equalization, what I would do prescriptively would be to roll voting back. And that's for both sexes. I think that...
Wait, no. She asked you specifically what women shouldn't get that men should get. So remember, he said voting. He did say for both sexes to cover it up. But he said voting. Interesting enough.
Rolling voting back for both sexes is a good idea.
And I want you to know why most men don't want women to vote. The men that understand this, they understand that when women vote, they most of the time vote Democrat. Most of the time, women vote for their interests, and their interests are never normally on the Republican side. He's a hardcore conservative. He's a religious conservative. Like, they don't want women voting because women are not going to vote. Most women are not going to vote religious conservatives.
And have some sort of perhaps like one house voting system or one marriage voting system, or people who have done some sort of collective service to the state for a voting system. I think that those things would all be very good systems for everybody. Now I would apply that, I would apply that broadly to men, and I would apply that to women. I think that right now men get the shaft because men are required to do a lot of jobs that women are not, which keeps society going, and women are not doing those things. And because of that, I don't understand why it is that women can nullify their votes and disenfranchise them, and most importantly, vote to send them to wars they don't have to go fight in.
So you would...
Well, then, like, why don't you believe in feminism? Because feminism believes in the fairness of all societies. So feminism believes that women should be doing those jobs. Women should absolutely be doing everything in society that men should be doing. There should be no barrier to entry for any kind of woman. Why don't you believe in feminism then? Like, your argument is weird. Like, that's the feminist argument. Like, yeah, they should be drafted into the military. Women believe that. Women believe that they should be doing all the other jobs that men should be doing. Men are limiting them from being able to come in.
Like, to disenfranchise both the men and women's votes?
Most of them, yes. I think would be a better idea.
What would this achieve?
Well, it would be that it would achieve the same thing our founders basically wanted to achieve, which is that they thought that you would have to have a state.
And I'm tired of this. The founders didn't want anyone to vote. They only wanted rich people to vote. They only wanted government officials to be able to vote. They didn't trust the entire population to be able to make a vote. That includes people like Andrew. They trusted the people that were in their constituents to vote. Basically somewhat like a parliamency to a degree, like where the parliament is the one where you elect the official, but after you elect the official makes the decision on whether or not you choose the government. We still kind of have that in a way. I don't know what he's talking about. What do you think the Electoral College is? You know, like we have what he has. The only problem is now we are starting to see that when people go out and vote and the electorals go against what people go out and voted for, that people aren't really getting a say-so in their elections. And people like him just want to eliminate everybody, but to each his own.
The country in order to vote.
But if you live in the country and if you exist in the country and if you're being legislated by the laws that the country is making, don't you have a stake in that?
No,
Facts.
Not always.
You don't?
In fact, many times you don't. Many times.
Not always, but you do. He's going to go to prison. Watch. He's going to talk about prison. Because that's the only area where you lose your rights, when you violate the law. But if you don't violate the law, you have all the rights within the confines of the law.
People actually get more back from the state than they put into the state. So that's at the expense of other people.
Who is that?
So there's lots of people who get a mass amount back from the government that they never pay to the government. This can happen through things like Social Security, disability, things like welfare, things like even earned income child credit that you may receive even though you don't actually pay anything into the system or very little into the system.
But it's a crime to lie on your taxes and commit. Isn't that tax fraud to claim a dependent?
No. There's just
that is tax fraud.
No. It's not tax fraud. I'm saying there's people who get more out of the system than they put into the system.
Okay, but they're still at stake because they still live here now. Are their lives not at stake if we're legislating them?
That wouldn't follow that because they live here they deserve the right to vote, though.
Yes, no taxation without representation. That's the point of representative democracy, is that everyone is represented.
Then how come the founding fathers didn't give everybody the right to vote from the beginning?
I mean, the founding fathers also endorsed and owned slaves.
Yeah,
but that's chattel slavery.
Just let it finish. Go ahead.
I mean, the founding fathers also endorsed and owned slaves.
Okay, but
do you believe in chattel slavery?
Yeah. So you do realize that they could do bad thing, right? I can agree that's bad thing, but that has nothing relationally to do with how they set up the system of government.
I mean, I thought this was going to be a debate on feminism. Honestly, I think that's kind of wild because it sounds like you're disenfranchising men. So who do you think would be? Are you trying to?
I'm not disenfranchising.
You are. You're taking away.
I'm not disenfranchising men. Calm down. I'll explain.
But if you're taking away the votes of a man because he is not, I guess, landowning, is that what's the criteria for having a vote?
I think ultimately more men would be voting because they would have more stake.
So can I ask? Can every man go to prison?
Yeah.
Okay. If they commit a crime, they can go to prison.
Yeah.
Everyone can do that?
Yes.
Okay. And everyone in this country has to abide by the laws of this country, otherwise they will go to prison, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so why wouldn't they be allowed to vote on the representatives that define those laws? That is a stake. If you can go to prison for committing a crime that is created by the government.
She used prison first,
you do have a stake legislatively in the laws that the government creates.
That still wouldn't follow that you would need to vote.
Yes, you would need to vote.
Why?
You want to vote for the representatives that create laws that are just and fair to you.
Yeah, why? Like you could have...
Because you could go to prison.
Okay.
That's a huge stake.
I'll show you, right?
I want y'all to see that this is privilege at its finest, too. Like, this is a white male who has lived in this society, who believes in disenfranchising votes because he doesn't see that black people, black males, black women, homosexuals, other groups of people have been disenfranchised to a degree because of some of the laws that are passed, right? So he's fighting to keep the system the way it is. Like, no, they shouldn't have any right at all. He's literally arguing that while not realizing like that there are people that don't have the same rights, and they need legislators to be able to pass things that they can get done, like that they can have for their own personal lives. And he's saying, like, no, we want to roll back on any of that. This is the example of privilege at its finest. I know people are going to argue that, but this example of privilege.
Put you in prison?
With hotels and vacation rentals, Booking.com has something for everyone.
Yeah.
Can kings also pass just laws?
No.
Sometimes. Maybe,
okay, so
maybe
if kings pass just laws, why do you need to vote?
Well, why did we fight
No, answer the question before you ask another one. I just answered all of yours. If a king passes just laws, why would you need to vote?
Because a king can also pass unjust laws.
So can legislatures.
Sure, but if you have a stake in that and if you're able to represent for your legislator, you can vote a legislator out.
Yeah, but you can also rebel against kings. So, like, that's what I'm saying. Your position doesn't follow. It doesn't actually follow for you to say that because you can be imprisoned inside of a nation that somehow gives you the right to vote.
Well, because you have a stake. You're saying that...
hang on. I'm falsifying your claim. I'm falsifying your claim. If you claim kings can make just laws, right?
Yes.
Then I don't understand. Why would people need to vote when kings are making just laws?
Well, then why would we leave the monarchy of England? If kings can make just laws, why would we leave?
Well, in that case, you had a nation apart that had a rebellion against the king.
Yeah,
that's what was going on. But kings have been rebelled against historically under certain circumstances many times.
So you'd like to go back to feudalism? Like you don't believe in democracy? Well, yeah, that is.
No, it would be
feudalism is under a monarchy.
It would be called limited democracy, which is exactly what we had here. Do you think we had feudalism because most people couldn't vote here?
We had limited democracy, and then there were like many uprisings against that limited democracy because everyone deserves the right.
There wasn't uprisings really against that. The only uprising that I'm aware of in American history against America was the Civil War.
The Civil War, the Civil Rights movement.
But that wasn't about voting. That wasn't about voting.
The Civil Rights Movement?
No. The Civil War wasn't about voting.
Well, I mean, it was about the owning of chattel slaves.
So not about voting then?
Which is also about...
Technically it had a degree about voting because they were mad that Lincoln was voted in and they felt like their representation in government wasn't being represented. They felt like Lincoln was going to roll back on certain things that they did. So technically it did have something to do with voting.
Human and civil rights.
But not about voting, though.
But voting is a civil right.
I don't know. I'm not sure that I believe in
this. It's about freedom and it's about representation.
Yeah. So let's back up.
That's what voting is. Voting is representation and democracy.
I understand, but you haven't actually made the positive case for why people need to be able to vote.
People need to be able to vote because they have a stake in the legislation in this country. If you can be imprisoned at this country, if you can be robbed of your bodily autonomy by the legislators of this country, then you should be able to have a stake in what the laws that those legislators are making.
Well, let's see if this makes sense. Do you agree with me that individual voters don't actually have very much power at all?
Individual voters, no, but that's the point of a collective vote.
Yeah, I'm with you. So individuals already don't really have very much power just because they can vote, right?
Sure.
So isn't it the case, actually, that what you're advocating for is political tribalism? Because you don't have individual power as a voter, you actually have to tribalize with other voters in order to have any sort of collective power, right?
Well, you're taking away power from all the voters.
Well, so you go out and you vote and you trust the process. You vote and you believe that other people out there will vote for the same thing that you're voting for. And if they don't, they don't. They do, they do. That doesn't necessarily mean it's tribalism, man. Come on, dude. Like, you'd have to say all across the board then it's tribalism. And then you would have to say that any system of voting would lead to tribalism to a degree. That's what you would have to concede to. So like no, it's not tribalism when people go out and decide to vote. He just doesn't want black people or white or black women or no. He just doesn't want black people, white women. He doesn't want homosexuals. He doesn't want any of those people to vote because those votes will limit what he gets. That's what it is. That's really what it's about. Like, and I'm fair with that too. Like, white men want to defend their problems. White men want to defend themselves. But I think the system should be egalitarian to a degree. I think it should be. Like, it should lead to egalitarian views. I don't know how we would get classes out of that conversation, but I don't know.
Answer my question, please. Tribalism, the idea that you, as the individual, do not have power, right? Yes. You do have to collectivize with other people, right?
Okay, but how is taking away a vote?
Yes or no?
No.
Yeah, okay, no?
But
okay.
Here's my question. How is taking away more people's votes disincentivizing political tribalism?
Yes,
because now I have to band with someone. Because now I have to band with someone who has a vote. I don't even get a stake. So you're saying because people
He's losing the
don't
argument,
have
that's why he's
power,
getting mad.
I'm going to take what little power they do have.
You're not answering my question, though.
It just doesn't make sense
Yeah, I
structurally.
know, but you got to answer my question.
It just doesn't sound like you believe in
It sounds like you need to
democracy.
answer my question, though.
It sounds like your question is meant to trap me because your argument
Can you
is
just
riddled with
answer the
logical
question,
fallacies.
please? What's fallacious about my argument?
You're saying that people do not have a stake in this country, therefore they do not have a right to vote.
It's not what I said.
Yes,
What you're
it is.
doing is a straw man fallacy.
Can we go back to
Yeah,
what
you can go. You can go back. What I said to you specifically is what you're saying doesn't logically follow. And when I'm talking about political tribalism, do you agree with me that you do, if you need to have collectives to have actual political power, are you not promoting political tribalism?
If you need to have but that's how voting works. It's about a majority.
So then you are promoting collective political tribalism, right?
So voting and then the will of the majority is essentially political tribalism, is what you're saying?
Well, it's not really the will of the majority. Here's what happens. No, not really.
Do you understand how voting works?
Do you?
He doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay, well then tell me how it's the will of the majority when a California legislator gets elected.
Well, everyone who would like to vote can vote, and then whoever gets the most
What about the people in Georgia?
wins.
They don't matter.
Well, why would a person in Georgia get to vote on a
So it's not
legislature
really
for
the
California
collective,
state
it's the
legislature?
tribe, right?
But
No, it's the people in California get to vote for what they get to vote for, and the people in Georgia get to vote for what they get to vote for. Like, oh my God, they don't live in that state, dude. You're stupid. Oh, he's so stupid.
Georgians get to vote for their
Right,
state
so it's a
legislature.
tribe then?
And then all of those legislators come together.
So it's a
to
tribe.
create laws.
He's so
So it's a
stupid.
tribe?
It's not a tribe, but those are called states.
Yeah,
That's what
states are voting for their own interests, right?
But states will vote for the governors.
Yeah.
Why would I get to vote for the governor? Hold on, pause.
Hold on.
Listen to me. Why would I get to vote for the governor of, let's say, Tennessee, if I
Right.
don't live in Tennessee?
Makes sense.
Okay.
So it's almost
So
like
then why
these
would-
individual states, right? They vote along tribal lines for that state's particular interests, right?
Yes, and
They're
then
not
each state has a representative
Right,
in
which
the
they said?
collective government.
Sure. In the federal government, right? You're
Uh-huh.
talking about in our Senate and in our Congress, right?
Yes.
Great. So let's start with this. If it is the case that you have California and Nevada, these are two states which are next to each other, you agree,
Sure.
right?
Yes.
Can these states vote against each other's interests when it comes to resources?
In the federal government, yes.
No, even at the state level they can, right?
Why would they be able to at the state level? I can't vote for the Nevada governor. I can't vote for
Because perhaps there's something
Nevada.
perhaps Nevada has some type of, I don't know, a tax or something like this that they're able to collect, which disproportionately affects Californians in some way. They can do that, right?
Old Spice Fiji gives me 24/7 freshness. It's gel on my skin, and it's mine.
What law is that?
Whatever it would be, they
So
can do
does
it.
it exist or does it not exist?
Listen, can they do that? Can they do that is my question.
Can Nevada legislate against California?
No, they're not legislating against. Listen to my question. Actually, I want you to repeat my question so I know you actually heard it.
I'm sorry, I'm not a dog.
Can you repeat it? Well,
No.
it's called steel manning a position.
Just say the question.
Okay. Can states vote against other states' interests simply by having a neighboring state, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say, for instance, that you were to have, like, I don't know, trucks which went between Nevada and California.
Who cares?
Right? And California took advantage of this by
This dude's
raising
making dumb arguments
taxes
this
on
morning.
gasoline, but only on the border areas where these goods
This is getting
came.
extremely boring. This dude's stupid. He's really stupid.
This disproportionately hurts Nevada truckers for some reason.
What does that have to
right?
do?
They can't do that, right?
Yes, they can do that.
Okay, great. So in California, if that was beneficial to Californians, they would basically be voting for their tribe against Nevada, right?
Oh my God.
But is that happening?
It
or
does
are you
happen.
just trying to use a hypothetical?
No, there's tons and tons of instances where different states do various things, even asking for federal money in overages compared to other states for different problems. Same thing with disaster support. They definitely are all trying to support their tribe, right?
Okay, so because states can potentially, hypothetically, vote against another state's interest, men and women should not have the right
No,
to
that's
vote.
not
Right.
the conclusion.
That's his
But
point.
that was your argument.
No.
That's your argument, you
No,
dummy.
do you know what a
No voting,
descriptor
both
is?
sexes,
What's a
one marriage voting system.
Why don't you understand the difference between a descriptor and prescriptor? What did I prescribe?
What you prescribed is one voting system. Is
Yes.
a voting system in which
What
both
I'm
men
doing-
and women are disenfranchised.
Yeah, what I'm doing right now is I'm giving you descriptors so we can determine if it's tribalism or not, because you said it's not tribalism to have collectivism in voting blocks, which is insane.
But what you haven't been able to answer is why disenfranchising more voters is somehow
Well, let me-
solving
hold on,
political tribalism.
Let her get to the end
All
of the
right.
sentence, please.
Well, let me explain it.
Sure.
The best way
He's
that I
very- he
possibly
keeps
can.
interrupting.
Your worldview promotes political tribalism. So what happens is this. NGOs can go to our government and they can bribe them for voting blocks. And that's exactly what they do. Non-government organizations do this, and lobbyists do this. And what they do is they raid the treasury from people like you and me so that they can bribe certain portions of the electorate in order to incentivize them to collectivize.
Okay.
That's why black people often vote as a monolith, for instance. They vote monolithically.
He straight just said it. Look, like, see, he doesn't want black people to vote. Like, he doesn't want black people, women. He just said it. He just said it. He literally just said it.
Up to 80-90% together, especially in national elections, because they're made certain promises out of the treasury from the electorate, usually at the expense of other forms of voters. This is 100% tribalism.
So how are NGOs bribing politicians, influencing who black people as individuals choose to vote for?
How do NGOs do that?
I just don't understand how you're saying. I mean, I agree that NGOs should not be bribing and lobbyists shouldn't be bribing, but instead of
that's
saying,
what they do, though, right?
Okay, but we're trying to get back to your claim that
I'm in
less
the middle of my
people
claim.
should vote. Okay, well, I'm responding because this is a conversation.
Yeah.
Sure.
He just made a racist claim. You just didn't catch it. Like, he made the racist claim. He doesn't want black people to vote because black people, and that's not, no, NGOs don't incentivize black people. Democrats make promises to all the communities, not just black community, the LGBT community. They make promises to women. They make promises that they're going to do things to make sure that they're represented in the election, right? Which gets them voters from the white side, those sides, and all those other sides, right? Republicans make none of those promises. They don't make any of those promises towards anybody. So because they don't make those promises, they don't win those voters. But Republicans are starting to make promises because they realize that the Hispanic group, blacks, all can lead to you actually winning an election. You can't just go off strictly just white people. You have to appeal to everybody. So to a degree, Trump did appeal to all groups. But anyways, like, he did. Like, Hispanics were liking him for a second there. Some blacks did, but not really. Most blacks went out for Kamala. But, yeah, he just told it. Like, he doesn't want black people to vote. Anyways, I'm out. Peace.